Welcome back to A Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Heath Pierce and Charlie Davies. And a question that I was trying to tease into the break, but Chuck answered it. Who's the better six, Tyler Adams and Yunus Musah? Are we in a position, boys, where if it was based on the opponents, we could find ourselves maybe electing to go with the Yunus Musah at the six, or is Tyler Adams just a bedrock? I think he's the captain. I think you got to have him on the field, but is there a conversation to be had that could be a possibility in the future, given what we've seen with Yusa and his continued development as a player? Heath, I'm coming to you first. I already heard from Chuck.
I don't think so. I mean, it could be when the game gives it, but I would still, even if I lined him up next to Tyler Adams, he's going to come back and get the ball in certain spots. But I don't think it replaces Tyler Adams. I think Tyler Adams has a lot of that kind of no frills work that we need in that spot. And he's serviceable enough that he can connect at least the first pass. And the more that you can get a true attacking minded player like a Gio Reyna and a Musah that have some interconnectivity and are comfortable in pockets and are comfortable with the game to their back and things like that, I think the better. But I don't know if we get, you might get the effort from Musah, but I think Tyler Adams, he's easy to forget because he's injured right now and we haven't seen him for a bit. And so you can dream bigger dreams, but I still think he's the guy that needs to stay in there and allow a little bit more of that freedom to Musah to be an attacking minded midfielder next to a Gio Reyna.
I'm getting triggered. I have to admit,
There he goes.
The comment section here of goal dangerous. Are you out of your mind? You can't. Musah's not goal dangerous. Adams isn't goal dangerous, so they can't play. Are you serious?
We got him, everybody. 22 minutes in, we got him.
Oh my gosh. That's why you have a Gio Reyna. That's why you have a Christian Pulisic and a Balogun. They don't need to be goal dangerous. You don't need all 11 players to be goal dangerous. You need players to have specific roles in the team. You don't need to rely on Musah to score goals or Adams or McKinney. I really like how Weston McKinney has developed within this team, though, the past couple of performances with the USMNT national team, playing the smart passes, going forward, angled diagonals, getting those late runs into the box, not trying to do too much. My man, Weston is really growing and developing into the player that we want him to be. And you see him taking positive steps, even though at Leeds United, it didn't work out. And that I think comes down to the style of play that Leeds had. It was, it's ugly. I think that whole philosophy of the Red Bull philosophy of like, oh, we're just gegenpressing and it's throw the kitchen sink at the opponent. We'll figure it out. Just press.
Whoa.
Like that's played out to me.
Jesse Marsh just took a stray from Charlie.
Oh, no, you're throwing that at him. I'm saying
that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing.
You got to evolve off of that. Just high press. There's got to be an element to it of let's have some dynamic play and something that's attractive, and you keep the ball instead of chasing the game the whole time, running at 100 miles per hour. So this is a good problem to have.
Of course, we have
Yunus Musah, Tyler Adams, McKinney, and Gio Reyna. Those are the four midfielders who you have an argument for all four to be on the pitch. All four to be on the same pitch at the same time, and then figuring out which of the three is the right combination. We saw in this Nations League semifinal final that trio without Tyler Adams works, but that's against Canada and that's against Mexico. That's not against Argentina or Brazil or France, Spain, those higher quality teams. That it'll be interesting to see when you're playing against teams like that. How does it work? So
when does Noel Buck push into this midfield? I just want to trigger Charlie some more. Charlie doesn't believe in the youth, so it's all good.
Yeah, he believes in Noel Buck. He'll give Noel Buck a run. He'll give Dwan Jones a run. But as soon as they go somewhere else,
you said Noel Buck, Kramaski, Ruiz.
Okay, let me ask you this:
you're throwing in Caden Sullivan.
I love Diego Luna.
Yeah, Kevin Sullivan, I should have definitely made the squad. I watched him play juggling on the beach. He's good. Dude. Chuck, are you telling me though, with this group that we put out, in hindsight, I'll give you even hindsight now, that we could have rolled out some 18-year-olds into this one and gotten at least a different look of what the future looks like? Or is that just the Olympics for you and this is not the right place for it?
In hindsight, over who? Like
just like a number of players.
over Busio or Mihailovic?
Josh Winder over Aaron Long? I know he's got Benfica stuff and whatever, but
yeah,
Well, I mean, yeah, we're talking mostly the midfield.
Sorry.
Center back, yeah, have what you want. But in the midfield, I think those players are not ready yet. The players, those younger players who are playing.
But wouldn't this experience been more beneficial to them than seeing maybe some of the other guys?
I think Noel Buck of the young players, though.
Of course, he's top of the list. Of course, he's top of the list. He's the one. He's the one. Huh?
He's performed the best out of that group.
Yeah, but as he plays with Lionel Messi every single day, his environment's going to be, just like. Well, I'm just using the Chris Richards argument. Like training next to Messi every day is better than any player playing in any other MLS team.
Well, if Chris Richards, if that method seems to work because he came back and he's a different player in the Nations League, he was stepping in to every challenge. He was playing out of the back, splitting the lines. And this is a player who didn't play that much, but yet his training methods and philosophy and the players he's playing with has changed. And that's elevated his game to a whole new level. So it does work for certain players.
Yeah, but it's not sustainable. That's not like he's not going to do 10 years at Crystal Palace as a starter.
No, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. But for the time being, it's done the trick.
Yeah.
All right. So we dove into the players, did a little bit of the homework stuff. We can touch upon that later. Let's talk about the coaching staff and talk about the interim to the interim to the interim, BJ Callaghan. He's come out and stated after
they got to fire BJ. They got to fire BJ after that performance.
I mean, yeah, you lose to Panama in the semis. I think that has to be taken into consideration. But obviously, did a hell of a job with the Nations League and didn't actually lose a game over 90 minutes during his tenure. He's got 4 wins and 3 draws, ultimately lost in penalties. There could be some room for some criticism, of course, for some of the lineup selections over the last 2 games in particular, and maybe the lack of motivation and energy from the guys, especially when there's a lot of prep going into that quarterfinal game against Canada. But he wants to stay. If Greg wants him, I assume there might be some interest from other clubs, MLS in particular, that might want him to fulfill a role as a head coach. Chuck, me and Heath have talked about this a little bit, but let's get your thoughts on BJ's future. And do you think he'll stay with the Berhalter coaching staff?
I see him staying with the coaching staff until the end of the MLS season. And then I'm sure they'll have some interviews lined up for him, because I think he really showed well in this limited role as a head coach. He's shown the ability to inspire the young guys, get them to play a certain style, give them that freedom. Everyone talks highly of BJ and just the way that he approaches players, have conversations with them, and everyone knows how he's the brains behind breaking down the tactics. That's what he does. So I think from that standpoint, he will get interviews. He's a good guy. I got a chance to work with him, and I have nothing but positive things to say. Just the experience of being a head coach, it's not vast. It's not. He had a little blip.
Sometimes guys are better at number 2 than being number 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is just a different set of asks and responsibilities and pressure, I suppose. I mean, you're still on the hook, right? If the number 1 guy gets fired, usually number 2 goes with him. Not always, but sometimes. Heath, any chiming in on this? I wonder what Greg's going to do, because obviously BJ came in and kind of put his stamp on things in some ways. And I think the biggest stamp was putting Gio at the number 10 spot and adding that one more attacking player to really unlock a few things. And obviously the addition of Callaghan was going to change how he looked anyway. But
I still think that like we struggled to get our strikers involved as much as we should, and changing that element, whether it came from him, came from somebody else, he made the decision. He took the risk in a big game that would or could have had an impact on him. Yes, you're the interim manager, but there's still pressure. You still have to hold a standard. And he made a change that we haven't seen, that we asked for over a year now, right? We talked about Pulisic at the 10. We talked about Gio Reyna at the 10. And granted, there's a lot of injuries through both of them through all that time. And we very rarely through qualifying had the team that we hoped for on the field, right? We had who we had. But him doing that, I think, was a dynamic change and a hopeful one for us to say, hey, if we want to be as good as we want to be.
Anthony Hudson did it before BJ, just to make that clear.
Well, this was with the A team though.
Yeah.
Right. I'm curious because with Tyler Adams not being available, not necessarily your hand was forced, but it gave you the opportunity to do it. Right now, when you have a healthy squad, there is a bit of a conundrum, which is what we've been talking about. Who starts in your midfield when Tyler Adams is healthy?
we still gave Kellen
take
Acosta
that-
a run
you
of
take that-
games. We've
Okay,
given a lot
okay.
of we have defaulted to structure over freedom, and I think that one little change, it's not the solution for every game. We know that, right? We're not going to run out that way against the top in the world and think that we can do that. Maybe there is some fluidity where you can pivot a Musa into a deeper spot or a higher spot when he's on the field and actually have that as established roles. But I do think that at least gave us a little bit of credibility and validity to this idea of like, if we want to dictate games, if we are going to play against a low block, we need more players higher up the field that can combine and take risks in the right spots on the field that can open up games. Of course, it's different now with Callaghan. But I thought we could have had the opportunity to do this with a Ricardo Pepi before, who obviously didn't make the World Cup squad. And so I think this is a natural evolution, but somebody needed to take a risk in a moment where we get rewarded because we defaulted back at times earlier on when I think about the run up to the World Cup of just playing very tournament-like and structured without ever having that just extra 5 or 10% of like, let's dictate a little bit offensively.
Well, I will add this though, in terms of those fringe players that no longer need to be there anymore. You brought them in for the harmony of the group in the World Cup. A lot of players that we've seen in this last cycle that weren't ever really going to play, but were part of it. And people are like, why are you bringing those players? Or they're not adding anything. You don't need to see those players anymore because you've already developed the culture. So the play speaks for itself. The players who are the leaders have already kind of emerged. So now in terms of, we only bringing in harmony, that's out. You're bringing in players who you see a future with, players who are going to push boundaries and try and push the starters for minutes. Those are the players that you're bringing in from now on. You're not bringing in some of the older veterans who have had some, here and there moments with the national team. Those guys are done. Now it's about bringing in younger players who are playing in Europe, or the younger players who are excelling, who maybe haven't had a chance to get in with the national team or haven't had an opportunity under Greg. Now is your time to bring them into the fold and go in a different direction because you have your core group no longer needed for the harmony. I don't need the harmony guys, the guys who are good and aren't going to fight if they're not playing or be angry. It's enough of that. Now it's like, let's get the fresh blood in for 2026. Let's get in some of those players who have shown some quality and need that first team experience.
Well, let's talk about the culture and harmony then, because Greg Berhalter is now going to take over his second World Cup cycle, the next window of games. And
we know how much Jimmy hates that. We know how much Jimmy
it's not that it's not. I just think it's an incredible challenge to continue to motivate this group when they know what's coming. I think there was a bump with BJ because these guys, and I think this could be irrespective of the coach, are just hungry to prove that they are good. That's one. And they love playing. Clearly looks like they love playing together, and that's awesome. But there is that moment where they kind of like, we know what's coming now. And to your point, Heath, we're gonna maybe now with Greg back, we're getting back to that structure, more structure.
Can I add one spin to that though?
Yes.
This team has added Callaghan, and you might add one or two more in the next couple of years, right? That actually make it feel like a fresh approach to like, oh, we're not just going out hoping to win games. Like, we're actually better than we were 6 months ago. We are like way better, right? We're adding pieces that could at least keep that. You know what it's like when you're on a stale team and it's like nothing's different. And you're like, oh yeah, now with this guy who just keeps beating us with this information when we know it's not going to change. Like, adding pieces that actually allow that to change and grow. Maybe that's I don't know. I'm trying to find a fresh spin on this, Jimmy, but like,
no, but also Greg comes in.
Keep throwing stuff at the wall. It'll stick.
Well, Greg comes in. It's not like when Bob took over, like he just picked up, won the group for the first time ever in men's soccer history. You could see there's a lot of promise and obviously the Confederations Cup and everything to build off of that build that Bob had in his first cycle. It didn't work in the second cycle. Bruce completed both cycles.
Came in on his interim too, though, by the way. Came on his interim.
Bruce had 2 cycles, and we couldn't get out of the group stages in his second cycle. And
whose fault is that?
that's not on him. It's not on him. But the part of it is. It's not all on him, I should say.
But whose fault is it?
Jimmy's.
Well,
whose fault?
It was mine,
Whose fault
apparently,
is it,
because I was
Jimmy?
playing in 2006. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. I'll take it,
Jim.
Chuck.
Just say, for example, Jimmy, say a name like Conrad or whatever. Like, just pick a name. You know what I mean? Like,
Fine, it
if
was
we were
my
going to
fault.
blame somebody,
I'll blame the
let's
referee
say
in the
you, for
Ghana game, the
example.
worst penalty
Yeah.
of all time. But
now we're blaming the refs because there's no
Yeah,
VAR. Now
yeah,
it's
of
now
course.
it's the refs' fault.
Yeah.
You know.
I just gives me pause because this is going to just be harder for Greg. He comes in. I say this with Bob and Bruce because Greg comes in with something different. There's an emotional issue with what happened with the Reina family, obviously leaving off a couple players with Ricardo Pepi in particular. He's got some bridges to mend, and I think they'll work through it. They all got to be professional about it and mature
You have
about
to,
it.
because it's nothing's changing.
But it just feels a little bit different. So there's just a lot of work for him to do. And this is going to be his biggest challenge as a coach, because to continue to motivate a group of guys, when you do it the first time around, it feels fresh and it feels new, as we're discussing. But that second time around can grow stale very quickly. Maybe with the additions of Callaghan, that's good. And I don't know who else is on the horizon that can make that difference. But ultimately, it's also going to be on the players to approach it with the right mindset as well. So there's a lot that goes into this, and I just think it's going to be a big challenge. And we have the additional pressure of everybody wants us and expects us to play well in this 2026 World Cup. And even though we're adding 16 teams to 48, it's just not going to be that goddamn easy. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, shout out to Andrew Matson. You guys are great. Glad to have the trio together. Hey, speak the truth.
Thank you. The trust fund is speaking. The trust fund is speaking.
You should see what they say when you're not here, though, Chuck. Nobody ever says like this. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's crazy because I'm in the comment section too. I have my burner account and I'm coming in there.
I love that.
With fire.
Come in hot. I always wondered who that person was when you weren't here. That's going like, "Where's Chuck? He makes the show great." You know. Like,
yeah. Now I know who S27 is.
You know, with the egg profile picture. You know.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.